All right, hey now, it's the Rob from 1061.
Rob, wait.
What?
This is post to post. We got to do something big, something out there.
What were you thinking?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Town Square Media and 1061 KISS FM proudly bring to you your podcast champions of the world. He's the R to the O to the B. I'm STEVE. We are your hosts with the most, bringing you everything wrestling related from post to post.
Hey, now it's the Rob from 1061 KISS FM here with my tag team partner in podcasting.
Hey guys, it's me, Steve, web contributor to 1061 evansville.com.
This is going to be our topic episode. I enjoy our topic episodes very much. This is for the fans, and what I love about these is that we take a topic and we run with it.
Yes.
So what we're going to talk about this time is on Monday's Raw, they had been referring to this upcoming Payback pay-per-view as the beginning of a new era in WWE. And it makes me think there have been a lot of quote-unquote eras in the WWE. I think first in anybody's mind is one that actually had the word era in it, the Attitude Era. But I kind of want to take a chronological approach. So like the Attitude Era had its own things that made it unique and made it stand out. As did the era before it, which we'll get to, and the era after it. All those things that made it unique, and we're actually going to try to encapsulate them and make them, identify them. Okay. And I'm even going to try to give them start and end dates for the most part.
Oh, wow, okay.
So the earliest that I wanted to go back is what I'm going to call the WWF era, unless you want to predate that.
No, the earliest I was going to go back is the Rock and Wrestling Era.
Okay, yeah, I actually have that, but I have that in two phases from now. The WWF I have is when Vincent J. McMahon was in control of the company, before Vince was in control of it, when it was a regionally touring company in the Northeast. The Bruno Sammartino is a guy who'd represent that, and it was very traditional.
Yes.
So that was what I have as the WWF. I don't really have start and end dates for that.
Yeah.
And then before Rock and Wrestling, I have the quote-unquote cable expansion era.
Okay.
When Vince started to take over the company, started acquiring talent from the territories, raiding the talent as they would call it, and utilizing the newfound cable invention as his backbone of his success.
Yeah, and actually attacking other territories.
Yeah, exactly.
Which was unheard of at the time.
So those are the two I wanted to address before Rock and Wrestling.
Okay.
Which is my third one. And I have a start and an end date on that.
Okay.
When do you have that as beginning? When did Rock and Wrestling begin, Steve?
I want to say Rock and Wrestling began probably about the same time WrestleMania did. That's when they put wrestling on the grand stage of them all.
WrestleMania is certainly the pinnacle of the Rock and Wrestling era. I'm sorry, I may have said that wrong. WrestleMania was the pinnacle of the Rock and Wrestling era. I have the start date of that as January 23rd, 1984.
Oh, wow.
A little bit before WrestleMania. I think Hulk Hogan's first title win kicked off the Rock and Wrestling era because he became the celebrity, the Hollywood star, which kicked off, in my opinion, that era. It became known as Rock and Wrestling because of their partnership with the popular MTV channel and their reliance on rock music. They even had shows on MTV at the time. What do you want to say regarding Rock and Wrestling?
It garnered a music for WWF at the time, WWF. It garnered a cartoon. I don't remember too much about it. I came in probably middle to end of that era in my fandom. I do remember watching the cartoon. You know, Roddy Piper was the main bad guy in that, and very cartoony.
Well, the cartoon, I'm glad you're spending time on that, is a great way to represent that era too, because the wrestlers at that time especially, I mean to a lesser extent today, but especially in the Rock and Wrestling era, were living cartoons. That was something Vince wanted them to be. They were colorful, they were animated, they were larger than life and unrealistic, and that was a real attribute, a real quality of the Rock and Wrestling era. And WrestleMania was born of that. Stars that represented that, guys like Piper, guys like Hulk Hogan comes to mind first. Honky Tonk Man, anybody with an outrageous gimmick, I think is a great faceplate of the Rock and Wrestling Era. And I have an end date on that too.
Okay.
When did the Rock and Wrestling Era end, in your opinion?
I think it ended when the New Generation Era began.
Okay, great answer.
I don't have a date, but...
Okay, see, yeah, I actually thought about dates. And the New Generation is what I have as the next era.
Okay.
And it was an ad, the New Generation was an ad campaign that featured out with the old, in with the new. And it was guys like Shawn Michaels and Bret the Hitman Hart.
The smaller guys.
Diesel, and it was 90s Zubaz looking neon, zebra print. It was, I mean, right?
Yeah,
it was flashing colors, which defined the 90s.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the unofficial start date of the New Generation is the steroid trial of the early 90s, when Vince wanted to get away from the big physiques and put the focus on guys who could work, guys like Bret and Shawn. So the unofficial start date, again, my opinion, the steroid trial is what kicked off the quote-unquote New Generation.
In my opinion, I think the New Generation started, and I don't know where this corresponds with dates, but when Bret Hart beat Ric Flair for the WWF title.
God, that was my other noteworthy event from that.
Yeah.
Bret Hart's first title reign from Ric Flair, 1992, is all around that same time.
Yeah.
And don't get it twisted, Bret Hart probably won that title at that time because of the steroid trial. Ric Flair was not an example of one of the larger physique guys, but he was kind of grandfathered in because of his success. But when he won the title, it showed that this was the ushering in of the New Generation, I feel like. Things that define the New Generation are things like the Clique, things like In Your House, the advent of Monday Night Raw.
Exactly.
You know, those are things that defined, in my opinion, the New Generation. I have an end date, and again, a specific end date for the New Generation.
Okay.
I'm assuming next comes the Attitude Era for you.
Yes.
Okay. What was the date the New Generation changed into the Attitude Era? Or do you not have one?
I don't have a date. Again, I was thinking more of events. I'm thinking
You're probably going to say the same thing I'm going to say.
The Stone Cold King of the Ring acceptance speech.
Really? Okay. I have it as the Montreal Screwjob.
Okay.
I feel like that was what kicked off the Attitude Era. When Bret left and unceremoniously, that's when Vince became a heel. And that was the starting point of everything.
Yes.
That was the Attitude Era. So in my opinion, that is when if you watch the show before Survivor Series in 97, and then you watch the Royal Rumble in 98, the next big pay-per-view, there was a D-Generation X In Your House in between there, it looks like a whole different company.
Yeah.
That's when the logo changed to the scratch logo.
Okay.
That's when Austin 316 was taking off. Tyson was there. I mean, that's when it became Attitude. Vince did give a speech on Monday Night Raw about we're now the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
Like, there was a speech, but to me, it happened a little bit before that. It was more Bret screwed Bret. That speech to me more kicked off the Attitude Era than the Attitude Era speech itself. Let's talk about what defined the Attitude Era. Boobs.
Yes.
More in a different way, colorful characters, but they also had to focus on realism, unlike the Rock and Wrestling Era.
Yeah.
They wanted Steve Austin to be Steve Austin, but with the volume on 11.
Yes.
Instead of being the ringmaster like a New Generation, or like a like a gimmick like a Honky Tonk Man from the Rock and Wrestling Era. They wanted people to be themselves. There was cursing. There was skin.
Anything that pushes the envelope was the Attitude Era.
Yeah. There was the Monday Night War.
Yes.
Envelope pushing. It was that's what it was. It was over the top.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous, and it was fun. It was my favorite era by far, without a doubt, to watch.
Yes.
So those are things that defined the Attitude Era. And then, what do you have as the next era in wrestling? I wonder if it's the same that I have.
I have what some people call the WCW era. I always thought of it as Ruthless Aggression Era.
Interesting. I have a Ruthless Aggression Era, but I have it following this one.
Okay.
I have what I call the Invasion Era.
Okay, yeah,
So that's we're on the same page there. And to me, the Invasion Era began the moment the Monday Night War ended. at the end of March in 2001, right before WrestleMania 17, when Vince in my very own hands, and specifically when he made that speech about acquiring WCW, that kicked off the Invasion Era. And things that define that era are things like new stars, new faces. By new, I actually mean old. New to WWE would probably be a better way to word that.
Shane McMahon in the WCW ring.
Yeah, simulcasting that event. Seeing guys you never thought you'd see in WWE in WWE. ECW invading, WCW invading, a pay-per-view called Invasion that really, it was a shorter-lived era than these other ones, but that's what I have as the next one, the Invasion Era, that I have running from March of 01 to Survivor Series of 2001, which leads me into the next era that Steve sounds like he agrees with, the Ruthless Aggression Era. I have that beginning at Survivor Series 01, despite the fact that the Ruthless Aggression speech. Now, do you remember Vince had a speech about Ruthless Aggression? I don't consider that the actual kickoff to it. I consider that more the midpoint almost of that. But this is what allowed guys like Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Randy Orton. Those are the faces I associate with this, right?
Definitely, especially Brock Lesnar, because he's the one that actually just proclaimed Ruthless Aggression. He came in as a force, and he was a force, short-lived force. But I mean, nobody made that impact that Brock Lesnar when he came in and destroyed the Hardys and the Dudleys, and I mean, he was Ruthless Aggression.
And then, I mean, remember John Cena's first match against Kurt Angle in 2002, and Kurt asked him, "What's the one quality you have that you should be in the ring with me?" And John Cena's first words on a microphone in the WWE, Ruthless Aggression.
There you go.
So I also call that one the Get the F Out era.
Okay.
Because it was all around the same time when they were getting rid of the F. I also, by the way, I want to go back to Invasion for just a second, and I wanted to say that this, while it was fun and exciting to watch at the time, was probably mishandled.
Very much.
They probably blew their wad way too fast with that. That should have played out as a longer era. I have kind of a gap between my next era, but what do you have next after Ruthless Aggression?
I have what they call the Reality Era.
Okay, I don't have one for that, but because I have such a big gap, let's go with it. What defined the Reality Era? What were the kind of like the dates of that?
I'd say 2008. I didn't really think of dates.
Okay.
I'm just thinking when WWE tried to get out there and make everything real and kind of give you the glimpse of behind the scenes, and this is really happening.
Okay.
I mean, and CM Punk coming aboard, and
I got you. Okay. I have the PG era, which I feel like defined, it was like kind of after the Chris Benoit stuff happened, and they were getting in trouble with steroids a lot. I feel like they wanted to clean up their image. They're publicly traded at this point. They're kind of getting a lot of grief from mainstream media. So I kind of have, around the time of the Chris Benoit tragedies as a PG turn. I mean, it wasn't long before the PG era that Lita and Edge were having a live sex celebration, almost fornicating, literally, on a bed in the middle of a Raw ring. Looking back on that, like, I don't like that. Like, I don't need that in wrestling. Like, I'm cool with being edgy, and I, grew up with Howard Stern, and, I'm not offended by nudity in pop culture and stuff like that, but I didn't need that over-the-top, in-my-face sex show. And then all of a sudden, we're PG, and your kids can watch with your kids, and I don't have a problem with that. I think wrestling can be great and be PG, but I consider this era to be kind of dull and boring. It didn't need to be. I don't blame the PG for it being dull and boring. I blame bad writing for being dull and boring. Guys that represent this, I mean, the first name I see is John Cena. Not his fault, but he was the face of the PG era. He was feuding with Randy Orton nonstop at that time. Again, I don't blame these people for it being boring. It just happened to be. We're kind of what I feel at the end of the PG era still.
We're hoping.
But I have one more that I want to mention. Do you have another one or no?
I really don't.
Okay. I feel over the past 2 years or so, we're in what's called unofficially the WWE Network Era. where everything is focused on this, and it changed the logo. A logo changing, by the way, is a huge sign of an era change.
Yes.
When the logo changed to kind of it went from the scratch logo to the I kind of call it outer spacey looking logo, a futuristic looking logo. But everything's about the network, and the network, while it's almost like a commercial for it, the network to me is such a great thing.
Yes.
So I don't mind the focus on the network, but it was after Raw, go to the network. Go to the network. Don't buy our pay-per-views. I mean, can you imagine hearing them say that? Yeah. Don't spend money on our pay-per-views. Go to the network. Everything is being focused back on this network.
Yes.
And I feel like that has been the definition of the era of the last 2 years.
Yes.
And then I feel like this upcoming era, it may be fair because I really feel like if you look at any Raw from this past month and you compare it to any Raw from March, February, it looks nothing like it did. We've got such new faces. Entirely new angles. No angle is continued over since before WrestleMania. Literally, it's all restarted.
Yeah.
So I do feel like we may be at the brink, on the cusp of a brand new era. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to what Payback brings. Looking forward to the new era, and I will say cheers to the eras of the WWE. For myself, the Rob, my tag team partner Steve.
It's time. It's time. It's Veda time.